What's going on, Steelers Nation? It's finally here. Sports Talk with Sam Teets, my latest podcast. I've been wanting to do this for a while now. I just haven't been able to put the time into it. Finally, just maybe 2 weeks or so ahead of the season, we're getting into this. This episode, the opening episode of the show, is your Pittsburgh Steelers season primer. We're going to be going through everything that happened last year, just recapping that briefly, predicting some things for this year, looking at the biggest gains and losses of the offseason, and then finally going through the season game by game and predicting the outcomes and coming out with a final record for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ordinarily, I would do this in video format. I am just very tired of that, and I would really like to do it solely in audio format for this episode. So we're going to try it out here. This is going to be published hopefully to everywhere, iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, all that kind of places. So we're going to try to do that and see how this all pans out. But for now, we're sticking away from the camera. So if you're on YouTube watching, unfortunately, there's going to be no visuals for you this time around. But we're trying out a new podcast format. So see how it all goes down from here. So let's just hop right into it. The 2020 record for the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, 12-4. Obviously, we know they go to the wild card round against Cleveland, lose 48-37. Turned it on late in the game, started scoring a lot more in the second half, but was just awful from the jump. Pouncey snaps the ball over Big Ben's head at one point. Early on in the game, just not a fun game to watch if you're a Steelers fan, especially after you started the season so hot. Had that massive winning streak, that massive double-digit winning streak to open the year. And then everything kind of falls apart towards the end of the season, partially because of injuries, partially because the offense becomes more predictable. The offense was just basically, hey, snap the ball to Ben, in under 2 seconds he's getting the ball out. And mostly it's happening within 7 or 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. The average depth of target for Ben was so low last year. And eventually that's going to bite you in the rear end because teams know how to cover that once you do it every single play. And the offensive line was not good enough to run block from James Conner, so we had plenty of issues there. But 12-4 record, so a very good season by any means. Unfortunately, did not end the way we wanted it to. We're going to recap the leaders at each position this year or last year, and then give predictions for who we think will be the leading man at that role for the 2020 season. So obviously at quarterback last year, Ben threw 3,803 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. There's no reason to believe that he won't lead in all those roles again. Because he should. And if he doesn't, I hate to tell you this, if Big Ben's not leading Pittsburgh in any of those categories, then the Steelers are not making the playoffs. It's that simple. We need Big Ben on the field. There was this whole debate of who's quarterback 2? Is it Dwayne Haskins? Is it Mason Rudolph? I hate to tell you guys, it really doesn't matter. At least not for this year, because if it's not Big Ben out there, we're not making the playoffs. Dwayne Haskins was bad last year. Objectively a bad quarterback. Mason Rudolph was worse. At least 2 years ago, when he had to play and could not beat out Devlin Hodges decisively for the starting quarterback job. You know, what you're looking at right now is probably 2 career backups in that second and third spot for Pittsburgh. It's perfectly fine to have competition between those 2 quarterbacks, just not for a starting job. So Ben will be the leader this year, and if he's not the leader in those categories, yards, touchdowns, and interceptions, I hate to tell you this, the season's not going to end well. So let's hope Ben stays healthy, and let's hope everything plays out and just stays chalk here and just stays the way we imagine it will. Running back, James Conner led the Steelers last year with 169 rushing attempts for 721 yards and 6 touchdowns. This is an area that Pittsburgh has to improve on. Now, Conner is a good running back. Don't get me wrong. Conner is one of my favorite Steelers from the past decade, even though he was only there for a short period of time and only had 1 outstanding season. Najee Harris, who we're going to talk about later in the show, brings a lot more to the table than James Conner. Hopefully he'll be a lot more healthy. I think health was a real big issue for Conner. If he had just stayed healthy, we might not be having this conversation right now about a new running back coming into Pittsburgh. There's also a bunch of salary cap issues that play into that, obviously. But Conner, from a health perspective, was just not there enough for Pittsburgh to really put the cash out to retain him. Najee comes in. I expect him to have more carries than Conner did last year, more yards, and more touchdowns. It really should not be that hard to pass that amount. The only thing that could probably keep him below that would be injuries. We've already seen guys like Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers all go down early in the year in the preseason. So hopefully that doesn't bite Najee because that's 3 really good young running backs that have already gone down. But if Najee Harris stays healthy throughout the year, I mean, there's really no one that should even challenge him for carries on this roster I don't really want to hear anything about Benny Snell. I don't trust Benny Snell to really even make the final roster, if I'm being honest. And roster cuts, I understand, are going on right now. So maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we'll know whether or not he's on the roster or not. But guys like Jalen Samuels should not be getting touches. Benny Snell, maybe in some power situations, but honestly, I'd rather just give the ball to Najee and trust his contact balance and trust his ability to stay upright than put Benny Snell in the game. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, Najee Harris should lead in every major rushing category for Pittsburgh. Wide receiver, most receptions, Juju Smith-Schuster with 97. Most yards, Deontay Johnson with 923 yards. Most touchdowns, tied between Chase Claypool and Juju with 9. So just give you the full receiver breakdown. Deontay Johnson, 88 receptions, 923 yards, 7 touchdowns. Chase Claypool, 62 receptions, 873 yards, 9 touchdowns. Juju, 97 receptions, 831 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I really love the receiver depth Pittsburgh has right now. Because this isn't even taking into account James Washington, who's the 4th receiver. I think he's a fantastic 4th receiver to have. Maybe you're less optimistic if he's your 3rd, but he's a perfect 4th guy to have because he can come in and make big plays. We've seen it happen before. My concern is none of these guys are going to reach their ceiling right now in the way Pittsburgh's offense was run last year. It just won't happen. Deontay Johnson, to me, is not a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. I don't think he'll ever get there, but he has 1,000-yard potential. The issue is that he requires the quarterback to be able to get the ball over the middle of the field and push it down the field. I just don't know that Ben, based on what we saw towards the end of last season with his arm talent, is going to be able to consistently get the ball downfield to Deontay Johnson. And the other issue is that he has to hold on to the ball when it does get to him because he had so many drops last year. That's not an issue I anticipate to continue with him. Maybe just got in his head after some point. Maybe he'll come in and reset it this year, not have that problem again. But the drops are absolutely horrible for Deontay Johnson. I think he's a very good player. I think he's preferably a wide receiver 2 instead of a wide receiver 1. Same with Juju. But we'll see if Deontay Johnson can maybe hold into more of those catches this year and maybe cross that 1,000-yard mark. It'll be very interesting. I think he's going to be above 800 yards if he stays healthy. I think he'll be above 800 yards for most of his career if he stays healthy. I just don't know if he'll ever get above 1,000 by how much and how consistently he will do that. Chase Claypool, to me, is the egregious issue here. And I say it not that there's a problem with Chase Claypool. I say it because it's a problem with Pittsburgh's offense. This guy is so big and so fast. I call him DK Metcalf light because he's not as fast as DK Metcalf, not as entirely as freakish as DK Metcalf. But he's arguably the closest guy to DK in the league in terms of the height, weight, speed combination, and the ability to be productive at that size. 62 receptions for 873 yards and 9 touchdowns. How? And I understand this is his rookie year. But how does a player like this not get to 1,000 receiving yards? I understand DK Metcalf didn't get there as a rookie too. So I understand it's not guaranteed for that to happen. But it's a guarantee. It should happen year 2. It really should. If Chase Claypool does not get to 1,000 receiving yards this year, and he's healthy, in a 17-game season, it will be an egregious miss by Pittsburgh and totally a fault of the offense coordinator, on Ben Roethlisberger, and on the team as a whole. This guy's too talented. Let's be honest, guys like Martavis Bryant, Chase Claypool is a lot more talented than Martavis Bryant. But Bryant came sometimes within striking distance of looking like he could get 1,000 yards in a season at points because of his ability to go deep and Ben's ability to make deep plays. I remember Bryant torching, I felt like Cincinnati every single time, the Bengals over and over again on these deep shots. And I get that Ben's arm is no longer in that range. But that's a problem then because Chase Claypool is going to have a lot of deep opportunities. He's going to get open. He's going to get in contested catch situations that he's going to have a safety who is 3 or 4 inches shorter than him with a smaller vertical. Or a corner that's 30 pounds lighter than him. You have to be able to feed him the ball downfield. And if Pittsburgh's offense fails to do that this year, then that's just a waste of talent. Because Chase Claypool is an 1,000-yard receiver. He should be going forward. If you get this guy 80 catches a year, I mean, he'll be phenomenal. Heck, if you give him 75 a year, he'll be great. So, yeah, I'm not saying he's going to be like a top 10 receiver or anything like that. I'm saying this guy just should be a consistent 1,000-yard wide receiver based on his athletic traits and the production he has as a rookie. Juju Smith-Schuster, the guy's been slandered so much for just such pathetic reasons. I hate people who go on like, oh, it's a TikTok thing. It's like, oh, Juju Smith-Schuster is so immature. Guys, It's a professional locker room. If TikTok is disrupting the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room, you have bigger issues than TikTok. It's a locker room thing. It's a professional locker room. There's grown men in there. They really don't give a darn about Juju doing a 15 to 20 second dance on the field before the game starts. Maybe the other team can use it as bulletin board material. But if you really need to get motivated by a 15 to 20 second TikTok, then you probably aren't really a professional football player. At that point in your life, you've probably been motivated so much that something like that little dance should not be the one throwing that should not be what puts the fire in your belly. It should not be the TikTok dance. You should already have that. You should already be there. So, I don't think the TikTok is a big deal. I think people should get over it. Juju, we know he's a good guy. He's done a lot of charitable stuff. He's helped a lot of people out in the community. And just watching, he's a great guy. He's great with his family. Always been a positive dude for the most part. So, I think you should stop slamming Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think he's a wide receiver 2, not wide receiver 1 necessarily after everything we've seen. Obviously, he was fantastic alongside Antonio Brown, but Antonio Brown does a lot of stuff for you that can help the wide receiver 2 be fantastic when he's drawing double teams. Juju, to me, it's hard because we haven't gotten to see a real season from him since that 2018 season because he's hurt, banged up, and didn't have a quarterback in 2019, unless you count Mason Rudolph as Devlin Hodges as quarterbacks, which I really don't at the NFL level at this point. At least not starting caliber ones. They're good backups, but not starting caliber quarterbacks. And this past year, they were playing a dink-and-dunk offense that fed him 97 balls for 831 yards. I mean, how many yards per reception is that? You might hear some typing. That's me typing in. I want to see the numbers for myself. Just to look at the yards per reception there. Because it's going to be horrendous. And it's not Juju's fault. It's what he was asked to do in the offense. 8.6 yards per reception. That's after averaging 15.8 as a rookie, 12.8 in 2018, and 13.1 in 2019. 8.6 yards per reception. It's insane. But you know how it was. You watch him doing these 5-yard out routes where they're throwing the ball outside, and Ben's getting rid of the ball in under 2 seconds. And that's going to Juju a lot. They're lining him up in the slot, and he's getting those really short passes, and that just doesn't work. Eventually that's going to hit his limit. We saw it happen with Pittsburgh late in the season last year. Juju's a good player. He's better than 831 yards. He's better than 8 point whatever yards per reception. Realistically, this is a guy who's going to be over 800 yards per season for the majority of his career. He's that good. And he's going to be a quality wide receiver 2 for a bunch of teams. I just wish he was utilized better and Pittsburgh's offense actually showcase his talent because he really has not been given that opportunity in 2 years, partially because playing with backup quarterbacks and injuries, and then this year playing in an offense that just does not translate to most teams in the NFL. And you're trying to evaluate Juju Smith-Schuster's value as a free agent wide receiver, but he's not going to be doing the same thing he's doing in Pittsburgh in somewhere like Kansas City or Baltimore. It's a different situation entirely. You have quarterbacks who can push the ball downfield there. You have an offense that doesn't try to get rid of the ball in 2 seconds. And granted, that's not all on Big Ben. Part of that's the limitations of how bad the offensive line was last year. But at the same point, you have to consider that Juju's probably better than his numbers from the last 2 years show. So if I had to pick a guy to lead the team in receptions this year, I would still stay with Juju because they'd like to get him the ball a lot. And he operates from areas in the field and areas in the receiving core that help out boost those reception numbers. Deontay Johnson has drop issues. Chase Claypool is more of the, I'm going to call him a home run guy just to generalize the situation. But I think Juju will get the receptions lead again. Receiving yards, I'm going to go with Chase Claypool over Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. And receiving touchdowns, I'm going to go with Pat Freiermuth. I'm going to go with Pat Freiermuth for receiving touchdowns. Just based on the hope that he's going to go out there and maybe get 9 to 11 receiving touchdowns. Because he proved it in the preseason. He can do that. He can go up and jump over guys and make some leaping touchdown grabs. But obviously, that's the preseason. Doesn't really count for anything. I'm just going to hope for some growth there and have Pat Freiermuth be my touchdown receiving leader for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021. Defensively, well, we had 3 first-team All-Pros or 3 All-Pro caliber players in T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Watt led the team with 15 sacks last year. That shouldn't change as long as he's healthy. Minka, 4 interceptions, led the team. That shouldn't change as long as he's healthy. I think Minka also led the team in tackles, maybe with 76. That should hopefully change because we'll have Devin Bush back, and hopefully he gets over the 100 tackle mark and has productive tackling, not just trailing from behind, making tackles and guys who've already gone 10 yards downfield. But yeah, there's not much I can add here defensively. Defense has been phenomenal. Pass rush looked phenomenal in the preseason. Guys were flying all over the field. I am more concerned about the cornerback room than I think most people are. Joe Hayden's good, but he's getting older. I think Joe Hayden's still a good cornerback, but he's not a fantastic corner. He's not as good as he was in 2018. 2018 was really a breakout year for him and Steve. Oh, sorry, 2019. Excuse me, 2019. 2019 for him and Steven Nelson was fantastic. This past year was nowhere near close to that, which is why they were okay cutting Steven Nelson instead of trading for him and trying to find a way just to keep him on the roster. So I don't know. I think Joe Hayden's a solid corner. Preferably on most teams he'd be a CB2 instead of a CB1. He's our CB1. There are a lot of issues there at corner for me. I kind of shake my head a little bit. Terrell Edmonds was good last year. First season, I can say he was probably an average level safety in the NFL, maybe even slightly above average. So the safety room's looking perfect right now. Linebacker room with Joe Schobert coming onto the team is going to be good. Defensive line, pass rush is going to be phenomenal. A lot of things to like about this defense again, but the cornerback room does scare me quite a bit. Anyways, on to the next segment of the show. Let's talk about the losses. Players Pittsburgh lost this offseason. Let's start with some retirements. Marquise Pouncey along the offensive line. Obviously, Vince Williams at the linebacker level was a bit of a surprise, but he retires, so we lose a lot of depth there. Vince Williams, never a standout linebacker, but always a consistent player and always a good locker room personality, a good person in the community. It kind of stinks to see him go so soon. Vance McDonald, who really didn't have much of an impact this past year, but in previous years had been a bit of a highlight reel for trucking guys and had been more meaningful to the offense. He retired as well. And the offensive line kind of got devastated along the line. So those are the 3 retirements I really want to talk about. But the offensive line really got devastated this offseason. Pouncey retires. There goes your center. Matt Filer signs with the Los Angeles Chargers. There goes a guard/swing tackle for you. David DeCastro gets cut. He's dealing with a lot of injury issues and problems with age and regression. So there goes your best guard from the past decade. And Alejandro Villanueva signs with Baltimore. I understand that he may struggle with Baltimore. We may point at Villanueva because now he's on the Ravens, and we don't like to say that you might miss a player to join the Ravens. But let's be honest, guys. If Okorafor is your starting left tackle, God help us. Look, Villanueva, maybe he wasn't really a Pro Bowl left tackle during his time in Pittsburgh. He might have gotten Pro Bowls because of the name recognition, the popularity. I get that. He's still better than Okorafor. So you can hate him all you want for joining Baltimore. This is just the reality of the situation. We downgraded a left tackle this offseason. But moving on, other offensive players that we're going to be missing. James Carter signs with Arizona, but we get Najee Harris in the draft, so that kind of fixes that situation. Defensive side of the ball, Avery Williamson, a linebacker we got last year. I think we traded for him last year, I believe. I think he's still a free agent, hasn't been signed by anyone. Never really was a huge fan of that trade. But it was kind of necessary because all the injuries we had along that defense, especially at that linebacker level. Cut Steven Nelson. He's now in Philadelphia. Mike Hilton signed with Cincinnati. That one really hurt because we kind of needed him to be our slot corner because there's just a lot of lack of depth at our cornerback level right now. And Bud Dupree, predictably, no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler, but that's okay because I believe in Alex Highsmith and a guy we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Dupree goes to Tennessee. So the lessons we learned here, we lose some linebackers, but I think we rebounded well at the linebacker level. Lose a running back, we'll be fine. Lose a tight end, we drafted one. We're okay. Losing 2 corners, I'm going to call both of them stars. I understand Hilton's a slot, but really slot level corners are starters basically at this point in the NFL, considering how much of the league is played in sub packages. So lose basically 2 starting caliber corners and lose 4 starting offensive linemen. Neither of those units have recovered. That's just the facts. We have maybe 2 starting corners in our secondary right now. And we basically need 3. And we have no depth behind them, I believe. And the offensive line, well, let's address it now with the gains we have. The guys we brought in this offseason through the draft or through free agency or trades. Kendrick Green comes in, and hopefully Kendrick Green, by the way, who we drafted in the third round behind Najee Harris in the first round and Pat Freiermuth in the second round. Crossing my fingers, Kendrick Green's the starter and plays well, because if he doesn't, I really don't want to see BJ Finney in there. I don't want to see JC in there. I just want to see Kendrick Green. That's it. And I know it's a lot to go in immediately as a rookie and replace someone like Marquise Pouncey, who's been so good for the franchise. But Kendrick Green has to be the future at this position because we don't have anyone else on the roster young enough to consider the future at the center spot. And we just need to have the young guys in the offensive line perform very well. So Kendrick Green coming to play the center role, replacing Marquise Pouncey. Some other guys we drafted, I believe both of them were fourth-round picks. Buddy Johnson, linebacker, does not move the needle for me whatsoever because of the linebackers we already have on the roster. I don't think he'll see much outside of special teams play this year. Dan Moore, a backup tackle. Maybe we'll see time that just because our offensive tackles are so questionable. It's not because Dan Moore is outstanding. It's just because I don't know what we have in our offensive tackles right now. Some guys are returning from injury. Devin Bush, obviously, who I already mentioned, getting him back at linebacker will be huge. Hopefully he has a breakout season because he really needs to have one at this point. Zach Banner returns from injury. He'll hopefully be our starting right tackle. It's important to note he only has 2 career starts at right tackle, or in general, I believe. So we don't really know if he's going to be able to hold down that position for a full 17-game season. I'm a believer he can because I like Zach Banner a lot and I want Zach Banner to do well. So I'm going to choose to be positive here and believe that Zach Banner can hold down a starting right tackle job. Other additions, Trey Turner, veteran guard who had an absolutely horrible year this past season, was once a Pro Bowl caliber player in Carolina, has since really fallen off a cliff, but he's coming to Pittsburgh now, so let's hope we can salvage something from him because he's been injured, banged up last year, like I said, really gone downhill pretty quickly if you look at the advanced analytics on what's gone on throughout his career. So he's no longer a Pro Bowl caliber player. I know some people were very excited when he joined the team. I think he's going to be a fine fill-in guy for 1 or 2 years, but really don't have any long-term aspirations to keep him on the team because he's getting up there in age. He's been injured, banged up, and certainly on the downside of his career. But should be good. Like, we needed him this year. If you're not keeping David DeCastro, you absolutely need to get someone like Trey Turner on this team, so I'm glad we have him on board for the 2021 season. Other additions, we traded for Joe Schobert, and that's how I'm going to pronounce his last name. It might be wrong, but I believe this is how it's been said because I've been saying it this way for years, so I'm just going to keep rolling with it. We add him to a linebacking core that already has Devin Bush. As we mentioned, those 2 are going to be our starters. The question is going to be, which one's going to be better this year? Devin Bush has not been outstanding through 2 years in the NFL, or more like, I guess, a year and a half, really considering how shortened the last season was for him. Some Steelers fans will say, oh, no, he's fantastic. Guys, stop just looking at basic tackle numbers. Just stop. That doesn't tell the story of anything. You have guys in the league who put up, like Bernardrick McKinney or Zach Cunningham will put up like 140 tackles a year and don't add much value to their defenses. So stop just looking at basic tackle numbers. Devin Bush has not been phenomenal so far. He's been struggling. He's not been living up to that top 10 pick status yet. But I'd like to point out that our guys throughout the league, guys like Roquan Smith, guys like Tremaine Edmonds, who were taken in the first round, took a couple years before they actually reached the level where they were living up to that potential. It's just very hard to deal with coming into the NFL from the college level and getting just basically abused by these passing offenses. That's what happens. Devin Bush has had trouble in coverage. But guys like Roquan Smith has figured out. Roquan Smith was an all-pro this past year because he was so good in coverage. So it takes some time to figure out. I believe that Devin Bush will get there eventually because of how athletic he is. We just have to kind of wait and feel it out. Hopefully it happens in year 3 because if it doesn't happen in year 3, I'm going to be a lot more pessimistic going into the future that he'll actually develop into a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker or even just a 10-year starter. I'd be happy with a solid player who just starts for 10 seasons. And of course, Joe Schobert has been a Pro Bowl caliber player in the past, did not have a great run during his 1 year in Jacksonville. One of the worst years of his career. But I think he can rebound as well. He's phenomenal in Cleveland. Not a fantastic coverage linebacker either, but I think better than what Devin Bush has been up to this point. And someone like Joe Schobert, of course, has had all the tackle data and some positive tackle data, stuff that's actually led to wins in games, so I believe he'll be an immediate impact player for Pittsburgh, and he'll be maybe not the next great Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker. He's a little bit old for that, but he certainly will be someone we can add to the chapter of Steelers linebackers and keep that tradition going moving forward. Other guys we've added this offseason, Arthur Mullet, I think is how you say his last name. Defense back, Miles Killebrew is more of a special teamer. Joe Haig, a backup tackle who played for Tampa Bay last year. I actually do like that signing, by the way, having that backup guy in case something happens to Zach Banner or Okorafor. I do like having him on board along with Dan Moore, even though I don't know if I would pick Dan Moore or Pittsburgh did, but having those two around is positive for depth at least. And then the big addition, outside of Schobert, obviously, is going to be Melvin Ingram. Getting him for little to nothing. He looked phenomenal in the preseason. Now, again, I understand it's just the preseason. I get it. But he looked fantastic. I'm so happy and excited to see that him and Alex Highsmith, by the way, who I'm expecting a lot from this year, having those two guys opposite TJ Watt, I'm very optimistic that this pass rush will be just as good as it was last year, if not even better. So I'm very happy with that addition. Again, getting Schobert and getting Melvin Ingram were strokes of brilliance. I really like those additions because we really needed them. Trey Turner, you're just kind of doing what you had to do. Getting Devin Bush and Zach Banner back from injury, I'm very positive those guys will come out and make an impact this year. Joe Haig, a sneakily good sign to get some depth at tackle. Of course, the rookies, the three guys I'm really looking forward to seeing, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and Kendrick Green. All right, now briefly, I want to mention some players that need to step it up this year. Cameron Sutton, we've been talking, or Steelers fans have been considering the idea of Cameron Sutton starting outside now for months. And he just did not look good through the preseason games that I saw. I really think he's a true slot corner. Like, not an outside starter. Just not. I don't know if you're going to do that cornerback 2 spot. I don't know if you're going to let Cameron Sutton go out there and kind of suffer out there in the CB2 role, or if you're going to move him back to the slot and just leave someone else out there to get toasted. But Cameron Sutton needs to be a lot better during the regular season than he was during the preseason because it was ugly. He's not going to be able to stay outside, and that's how he's going to play. Devin Bush entering year 3, even though it's more like year 1.5, basically, because of everything that's going on with the injuries. I would like to see some improvement from him, specifically in pass coverage. I already kind of talked about that. Kevin Dotson, a lot of optimism that he's going to be a phenomenal offensive lineman. He was a wrecking ball last year in the very limited snap count. So let's put it this way. He was playing in the very limited role last year, not a ton of snaps, so we can't use his snap totals to project what he's going to do this coming year because there was just not enough of them. But rumors out of camp and out of the preseason so far have been very good for Dotson and his projected growth as a future starting guard in the NFL and maybe even a high-end starting guard in the NFL. So I am very positive that he's going to make a positive impact on the offensive line and probably be the best offensive lineman Pittsburgh has this year. And there was someone else I really wanted to mention. And now I'm blanking on it. Who was it? Alex Highsmith. There we go. Alex Highsmith, to me, is the perfect running mate for TJ Watt. Someone who is already showing a lot of promise as a rookie on a very limited snap count, stepped in for Bud Dupree, and we really didn't see the defense take a step back because of losing Bud Dupree. Alex Highsmith did a good job holding that role down. Now he gets to split some snaps with Melvin Ingram, which I think will be a good transition for him to go into a full 17-game season now. And I think he's going to be very productive. I think we're looking at probably a 6 to 9 sack season, depending on how many snaps he splits with Melvin Ingram. It really does come down to how that snap count gets split up. But I think we're seeing Alex Highsmith stepping to a role where he could be a full-time star moving forward. And I am excited to see what he does because this Steelers defense is very good at getting pressure, obviously, and creating sacks. I think they've led the league in sacks maybe for the last 4 years in a row, I believe. So there's a lot to live up to for Alex Highsmith. I believe he can fulfill that and step into that role and be a tremendous outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, quickly, going through the schedule. Steelers opening day is Sunday, September 12th at Buffalo. Not a great place to start, to be honest. That's probably going to be a loss. And I shouldn't have to explain to you why. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, not good for Pittsburgh. They also have a trio of very good defensive backs. A lot of young pass rushers. I don't really know how they're going to perform yet against Pittsburgh's offensive line, but I give them a little bit of an edge because it is Pittsburgh's offensive line. And outside of Dotson, I really don't have a ton of hope for the unit being a high-level group this year. So we're saying that's going to be a loss. Next game, the Raiders win. Next game, Bengals win. Next game, Green Bay. Probably going to be a loss. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb. I don't know when David Bakhtiari is coming back, but they still have Elton Jenkins. There's a lot of stuff there. Zadarius Smith on the defensive side. Rashawn Gary's getting better. Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Jerry Alexander. It's a very talented team. I just don't see Pittsburgh winning that game. Denver to me is tough. They play Denver and then they play Seattle. That's games 5 and 6. They're going to win one of those. I think it's going to be one of them, either because Teddy Bridgewater and Denver are going to collapse on the offensive line, or Russell Wilson is going to have one of those 3 interception games and they just can't run the ball against Pittsburgh's defensive front. One of the two. So I'm going to say Pittsburgh goes 3-3 in their first 6 games. They play Cleveland and Chicago next. I'm going to say we're going to beat Chicago. I'm going to go with splits, by the way, this year. I'm going to split it with Cleveland. I'm going to split it with Baltimore. Just giving you a heads up. So let's say Pittsburgh wins the first meeting, and they beat Chicago as well. They're now up to, 4? Can I count? They're up to 5-3. There we go. Oh, man. I'm a cashier, too. This is terrible. Okay. Up to 5-3. Next game against the Detroit Lions. I mean, really? Do we have to discuss that? They should be at 6-3 after that game. Then the Chargers. The Chargers, to me, are kind of in the same boat as Denver, Seattle. It's really a toss-up game for me. I don't know if Joey Bosa is going to be healthy. If Joey Bosa is still healthy at that point in the season, he's going to be a handle to deal with. I really don't know what Derwin James is going to look like. If Derwin James is healthy and back to his old form, he's going to be a hassle. Justin Herbert, I think, will have a good year. They got Keenan Allen out there as well. Jared Cook. The offensive line is obviously very much improved. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to say it's a loss just because Pittsburgh's won so many games in a row, and I feel like at some point you have to hand them a loss. So if you go 1-2 between the games between Denver, Seattle, and Chargers, I think going 1-2 in those games is probably what's going to happen, no matter what order you put them in. So I think 1-2 between the Denver, Seattle, and Chargers games. So that's going to be a loss for Pittsburgh, which brings Pittsburgh to 6-4. Then it's Cincinnati again. I'm going to have them up to 7-4. Then it's Baltimore. And they play Baltimore twice in the final 6 weeks. And I think the first game against Baltimore, we're just going to say it's a loss. We're going to say the first game in Baltimore is a loss. And again, remember, I'm splitting with Baltimore, so don't get mad at me, okay? I just think it's going to be very tough to sweep Browns since as talented as they are. And when it comes to Baltimore, the rivalry is so good, you really don't know how it's going to play out every other year. So I'm just going to say split, and we'll just go there and just try to avoid taking too many people off. At this point, Pittsburgh is 7-5. They play Minnesota. I think it's going to be a win. We're up to 8-5. Then it's Tennessee. I'm going to call that a loss. Maybe. That's another coin flip for me. I'll say a loss and we'll go to 8-6. Actually, no, we're going to give a win. We're going to go to 9-5. And I'm going to say that's a win just because Pittsburgh's line is so good. I think they'll be able to slow down Derrick Henry and focus mostly on the passing game. Again, I don't really trust Pittsburgh's secondary, especially against Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Ryan Tannehill, but I'm going to say it's a win anyways just to sit Pittsburgh for the 2 losses they're going to take between playing Kansas City the next game and then Cleveland in their second to last game of the year, which takes Pittsburgh up to 9-7. And then they play the Ravens in Week 18. Because we said they lost to Baltimore early on, we're going to give them a win here. Brings them up to 10-7 on the year. I really think a 10-7 or a 9-8 finish is likely, unless they just sweep all those toss-up games, which again would be Tennessee, in my opinion, the Chargers, Denver, and Seattle. Those are the 4 toss-up games to me on the schedule. If they sweep all those ones, well, good for them. You can tack on 2 more wins than actually you can tack on 2 more wins than I predicted. They'll be at 12 wins then. So 2 more than I predicted in this video. But again, I'm really feeling 10-7, 9-8 this year, unfortunately. I would love it to be more than that. I would love to win the division again. But we'll see how this plays out. This is what I'm predicting so far. And this video is getting kind of long, or this podcast is getting kind of long, so I'm going to cut it off here. Again, this has been your Pittsburgh Steelers primer on Sports Talk with Sam Teets. I'm very excited to kick off this podcast, hopefully get a lot more episodes coming out in the near future. But anyways, guys, thanks for stopping by. Have a good day, and I hope to talk to you all later.